American Assassin. It wasn't boring. It wasn't cliche. The only bad part was Dylan O'Brien's performance. Transformers: The Last Knight. It did things that are different than the other Transformers films. And it's exciting and entertaining. There's great character in it. The Dark Tower really took its time, built its world well. Matthew McConaughey didn't look weird in it. It doesn't sacrifice good storytelling for good action. It does the opposite. The Mummy was cool. It introduces the mummy. That's why we showed up for it. So it really knew its audience and knew that it needed a good mummy. It doesn't make it a Tom Cruise vehicle like you thought it would be. The last half is way better than the first half. Leatherface was finally the reboot the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies needed. Now, if you take the opposite opinion, then you have my top 5 worst movie list. Bam, let's go to the best movies. Hi Reject Nation, I'm getting out my favorite movies of 2017 list out just on time. Nope, that's a lie. It is like 6 or 7 days late depending on when this video is coming out. I'm gonna give you guys a heads up. Most people do a top 10 list. I've seen a lot of movies this year. A lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank my favorite 15 movies. I'm going to spitball through them super quick. Some of them we haven't done reviews on, but most of them there are full-length reviews for them on YouTube. Before I hop into this list, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been becoming a part of our Patreon. Our Patreon page is really growing a lot right now. It's become like a more personal, free-flowing YouTube channel. We do like a weekly Q&A, and we have a lot of music video reactions on there, a lot of exclusive reactions, and just a lot of special videos over there. I'm having such a blast. Thank you to everyone who's really been becoming a part of the Patronaject Nation. We'd love for you to join too. I haven't actually seen anyone else's top movie list at all. No, not a single person yet, because I didn't want anyone's to influence mine. All right, so number 15 for me would have to be 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I actually just caught this movie this week, and I was like, I have to throw it on my list. I would have to say Frances McDormand is probably my favorite performance of the entire year. She's so good in it. She kind of reminds me of every woman I've ever dated. That's not true. It's a really effective story and a great character study of all these people dealing with a very specific, controversial event. It's a pretty edgy-ass film, and it really goes all out. The reason it's number 15 is because I'm one of the people who fell under the category who didn't fully agree with how the movie ended. This movie had an ending that was very much debated. I even had to go look up to see exactly what the director intended with the ending of the film. And even though I read what the director had to say, I was still like, yeah, I don't actually agree with how this film concludes. It kind of left me hanging a little bit. I was a little surprised that it ended where it did. I could have used another half hour, even though the film's already 2 hours. But for everything that we got, even the final scene of the movie, it's perfectly acted. The script is awesome. It's just the ending and the fact that it's just a really freaking depressing ass movie. It's so depressing. I saw Monsters Ball while I was on vacation during Christmas, and that's one of those movies that's super depressing and just keeps getting more depressing. And this is one of those films too. What I guess was a tiny shred of hope at the end of the tunnel. Number 14 is a great transition from 3 Billboards. I'm talking about none other than Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok talked about plenty on this channel. It's, to me, one of the best MCU films. Just because it's number 14 on my list doesn't make it like, oh, one of the films I like the least. This is my favorite films of 2017. Thor Ragnarok was completely entertaining. Chris Hemsworth kills it in this movie. All the characters are great. I've talked about this movie so much. It was on the ranking the comic book movies list. Just know it's one of my favorite MCU films, hands down. Number 13 for me would have to be Blade Runner 2049. Number 13 is probably not where it should actually be at on this list. I think the reason why it's number 13 is because of my specific viewing experience. Like an idiot YouTuber I can sometimes be, I did a live stream and said that I was on my way to see Blade Runner 2049, and I figured I was going opening day, so, you know, no one's gonna ruin it for me, and it's a live stream. But I was 180,000% wrong. I got the major plot points spoiled for me during that live stream, and then I watched it 10 minutes later, and it really had an effect on me. Like, oh, I know it's not, it's more about the journey and all those things. There's a lot more to take than just these plot twists. It was still really in the forefront of my mind when I was watching it, but from my observant analytical side, and there were plenty of scenes that still had me gripped, and Ryan Gosling, of course. I still really love the film. I think it's way better than the first one. I'm honestly one of those people who doesn't really care for the first Blade Runner. This one, though, I think is amazing. It sucks that it bombed, but it's also not a surprise. I mean, the first one's a flop, and then no one was like, this is a cult hit. And why did you spend so much money on this cult hit? Now, I'm putting this movie at number 12. As I put this at number 12, I was thinking, I wonder if I'm gonna get a lot of crap for not making this part of the top 10 at least. That is Baby Driver. Baby Driver to me is still one of my favorite films of the year. I thoroughly enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It's super entertaining, the editing is great, and even though I consider it probably my second favorite Edgar Wright film, there was something there that I can't quite pinpoint that didn't emotionally get me enough. And not that it needs to do that. If you watch our review for the film, you'll see how I truly feel about the film, and it's also been some time since I've seen it. I mean, you see a lot of movies throughout the year, but I do remember this being easily one of the most entertaining films I've seen all year, and one of the most impressive edited films and choreographed films I've seen all year as well. All right, number 11. Oh boy, I can't wait to get crap for this one. Mother. I'm putting Mother at number 11 on my list. It was a movie that frustrated the shit out of me. It was a movie that got me thinking. Oh man, it was chaotic in the theater. I remember when the movie was done, I went, what the fuck was that? And people started laughing. But it was also a movie that just had me thinking for days. I thought about this movie for a while, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. I like how ballsy it is. I like how it really just goes all out, and the performances are good, and it does different things that you just wouldn't see in a typical Hollywood movie these days. And even though the marketing's very misleading, the film itself is something to absorb. And after I ruminated on for a while, I rarely use that word. After I ruminated for a while, I realized, you know what? I love the shit out of this movie. All right, entering the top 10 zone here. Number 10 for me would have to be none other than February's Get Out. Actually got quite a few horror movies on here. Some people might consider Mother a horror movie. Get Out, Jordan Peele's directorial debut, was quite an impactful hit, this one. It was an amazing film. The performance by Daniel Kaluuya is amazing, man. That hypnosis scene. Oh, dude, he's crying and everything. That was a great ass scene. The revelations that were going and the way this plot unfolds, it is one of those like horror thrillers that you could watch on repeat viewings and then still go, man, this is a really clever film. You can get more from it each time you watch it. Arguably, it should be way higher on my list, but right now it just sits at number 10. My feelings tend to fluctuate. Number 9 for me is Split. Split was such a delightful surprise. You know, M. Night Shyamalan making his comeback with The Visit, sort of. That was like an introduction to his comeback, and Split was his official comeback. This film was an intense ride. I love a good mystery building plot. James McAvoy in this film is just so amazing. Him alone is the reason to watch this movie. I feel like even if you don't like this movie, there's no denying James McAvoy kills it in this film. It came out in January, so it was a minor spoiler, but it did something that no one was expecting, but it gets you excited for a crossover movie that was announced within the movie. Even though I didn't really love that scene specifically, the concept and the idea and the announcement in and of itself, I'm looking forward to Infinity War like crazy next year. I really am. If there's a trailer I can't wait to see, it's definitely the Glass trailer. And this movie, man, it gets you pumped for that. After seeing Unbreakable and Split, it gets you pumped. Number 7 on my list is a low-budget indie horror comedy that I don't know how many people saw. I don't think that many people saw it. It's my edgy number 1. It's my one to make me stand out. That would be this movie called Tragedy Girls. I saw the trailer for this movie, loved it, and then I ended up watching the movie. I love this film. If you guys haven't seen Tragedy Girls, it is one fantastic comedy horror film. It's a movie that takes it from the perspective of serial killers in high school. It really rides this dark tone that never loses the comedy beats and really commits to its murderous aspects. It gets violent, it gets dark, it gets cynical, but it has such a weird heart about it. And I love a movie with main characters where you're so back and forth on whether or not you should love them or hate them, and that works in great effect for this movie. Performances all around are great. Seriously, if you haven't seen Tragedy Girls, I highly recommend watching this film because it ended up being one of my favorite movies of the year. Alright, so number 7 for me, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Star Wars: The Last Jedi is a movie I have talked way too much about on this channel. I know it's an audience divisive film with the Star Wars fans, but I have to steal John's line. I think he put it best. What was your line again, John? It does great film things for film?
Oh yeah, it does good film things that are Yeah, it makes good film choices but bad Star Wars choices.
It makes good film choices but bad Star Wars choices. Quote me on it. You guys know how I feel about it. It's my second favorite Star Wars movie of all time. Bam! Get mad. The Shape of Water. I just caught this movie the other day. Did a full review for it on Patreon. Talked for a long ass time about that movie. The Shape of Water is a beautiful romantic film that manages to weave so many different elements, so many different plots within this world of the 1960s, and it all comes to great resolution by the end. There's no plot left hanging. The performances by Michael Shannon and Sally Hawkins, Richard Jenkins, Octavia Spencer, and the creature who's, obviously paying tribute to the creature from the Black Lagoon. Their romance was so believable, and Sally Hawkins gives one of the best performances of the year. Sally Hawkins has one of those body language roles in here, and she moved me to tears like at least a couple times in this film. And the direction, the cinematography, the music, everything about it is Guillermo del Toro at its best. I've been waiting for del Toro to do another film in pure del Toro fashion, and this is it. Another movie I finally caught this week, The Big Sick. The Big Sick is the true story based on Kumail Nanjiani's real-life story of how he met his wife. Of course, there's things that are tweaked for movie preferences. It's a story about a Pakistani man who's been raised in America, and he's become very American. He falls in love with a white girl, but because his family wants him to marry a Pakistani woman, creates conflict with him and his girl, and his girl ends up landing into a medically induced coma, and it's this awkward tale about him having to hang out with his girl's parents who don't really care for him. It's this really just human tale. It's one of the more simple movies of this whole list, but it's incredibly funny, incredibly heart-touching. I kind of compare it to being a more realistic version of something like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, because it has those family-touching vibes about sticking true to your ethnic roots. At the same time, though, it has that Judd Apatow, Kumail Nanjiani R-rated style of humor. The performances are so sincere and so authentic, and while there's some whimsical stuff to be had, it also has a realistic approach to it as well. And it's one of the more mature romantic comedies. I fell in love with this movie, and it's that movie that made me feel really good when it was done. Number 4 for me was a movie that I was kind of surprised became one of my top 5 favorite movies of the year, but once I was done watching it, I was like, yep, definitely is. And that is Coco. Coco is a beautifully animated film about so many family themes and messages and values, and about following your heart and pursuing your passion and knowing what's important in your life. It is easily one of Pixar's best movies. We did a top 5 Pixar list recently, and I listed Coco pretty high up there, and the music in this movie is great. I think this movie made me tear up the most. I think when I look at my top 5, I think they all made me cry at some point, and this movie had me tear up a lot. I was so moved by it, and it's a delightful family film. It's the definition of a great family film, one that kids will love and one that adults will probably love in some ways even more. Number 3 is a comedy, or like a dramedy, that I knew I would like. I just knew I was gonna like it. I wasn't expecting to love the shit out of this movie. It is a movie that surprisingly inspired me. It's a movie about the worst movie of all time, yet they make what is one of the best movies of the year, and that is The Disaster Artist. The Disaster Artist is based on the true story of the making of The Room, and James Franco, man, he kills it in this movie. He is so good. It was interesting to see a guy having to portray a dude who's known to give one of the worst performances in film history and make a great, sincere performance out of it. It's a movie that's more than just, watching a disaster take place. At the end of the day, it's a movie about following your dreams and following your heart, and you never know what might become of that. You never know what might be special that comes from it. I remember watching The Room and feeling like there's something kind of special about this movie, because you feel good when you watch The Room. Even though you know it's terrible, you feel good. This movie ends in a way where you see the specialty of The Room, and beyond that, it's just a delightful journey of best friends and following your ambitions. It's amazing. This might get confusing because we did a ranking of the top comic book movies of 2017. I put this as my number 1. For this list, I was coming at it a little bit different. I was thinking like, what are the best films though? Like, because I said like, this is arguably the second best comic book film. It's my favorite comic book film of the year. But in terms of just film, I would make it number 2, and that is Wonder Woman. I've talked plenty about this. It's number 2, okay? I'm just saying that. It's beautiful. It's an awesome film. It's everything I pretty much want in a movie. There you go. Number 1's Logan. Talked plenty about it too. No need to go into all the detail about it, right? It's epic. It's great send-off for Hugh Jackman. It's like my kind of movie in terms of its Western slow build vibe with great violence and great character. It's badass. It's coolest movie of 2017. Alright guys, well, instead of asking you the question that everyone's asking, I'm sure, what's your favorite movie of 2017? I'll ask you guys, what do you think will be your favorite movie of 2018? Or your favorites? Have you already sold yourself that this will be your favorite even though you haven't seen it? You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Please click that notification bell to get notified every time one of our videos is up. And please check out our Patreon. Become a Patronaject today. It's like a second YouTube channel.